Right now on Upfront.
Taking on Trump.
I would say this is a dire situation.
The Democratic primary for governor taking shape. Candidates looking to distinguish themselves amid rising gas prices.
That's a very small price to pay for getting rid of a nuclear weapon from people that are really mentally deranged.
And now the new candidate entering the race facing widespread condemnation from his own party.
We need somebody who is battle-tested.
This Sunday, Democrat candidates for governor David Crowley, Missy Hughes, and Kirk Bangstad.
Then the big bet. Wisconsin suing the major prediction markets over sports betting. And now the feds are firing back. The head of litigation for Coinbase is here, plus Attorney General Josh Kaul to respond.
And what happened to that attempt to push out the state Republican Party chair ahead of next week's convention? J.R. Ross with his new reporting just moments away.
This is Upfront with Jaron Jordan and political director Matt Smith.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Happy Mother's Day. This weekend, the Democratic primary for governor is taking shape. The candidates now rolling out their plans, they say, to take on President Trump, including the newest candidate in the race facing widespread condemnation from his own party and that interview with the FBI.
Other candidates attempting to capitalize on surging gas prices. Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley blaming the president and the war in Iran, saying the county could now face up to $1 million deficit because of rising fuel prices.
But we want to have to take a look at our non-essential services and how we're going to have to cut back, which is going to affect our residents here in Milwaukee County. And quite frankly, these are decisions that all municipalities are going to have to face.
To those who would say, well, listen, you don't budget for a fluctuation in gas prices, what would you tell them?
No one will budget for a 30% rise in gas prices, right? And this is because of a particular decision that was made. We know that gas prices rise and they fluctuate. And yes, we are prepared to do what needs to be done. But it's hard to prepare for a 30% increase based off of a war that this president decided to go into.
Did the county have similar issues back in 2022 when gas prices were at this level or even higher, I guess, approaching $5 mark?
When the gas prices were high, yes, it did affect us, but we were able to take that force, right? Because they weren't as high as what we're seeing, and definitely not at the rate of increase that we have seen in the past couple of months.
Joel Brennan has pitched this idea of a gas tax holiday. Would you support that in any measure?
I'm not sure what exactly that would do for us to move forward, right? You know, that's only dollars that helps to actually rebuild our infrastructure here locally.
How would you describe the state of the primary right now as we head into the summer?
I think a lot of people have been, quite frankly, exhausted by politics. There's a lot of frustrations, right? You're not just frustrated with Republicans. Folks are frustrated with Democrats, and especially what is happening at the federal level. I think, politics has really been in people's face right now. But there are a lot of folks who are paying attention, and so it's been really exciting to go all across the state of Wisconsin and connect with as many folks as possible, talking about what I have done as the Milwaukee County Executive and how I will be able to deliver for them as the next governor of Wisconsin.
What do you make of Kirk Bangstad getting in the race this past week? What does that do to the primary?
I'm not sure what that does to this primary. You know, this is democracy. Anybody can get into this race, so I'll welcome all competition, healthy competition.
Let's bring in Missy Hughes, Democrat gubernatorial candidate. Missy, welcome back to Upfront.
Good morning.
Let's just pick up right where we ended with David Crowley just before you just moments ago. What do you make of Kirk Bangstad entering the race as a Democrat?
You know, everyone who is in the race is here for a reason, and I'm just really focused on running my race and making sure that Wisconsinites have an opportunity to hear my message of building a strong economy and supporting Wisconsinites in their efforts to prosper.
There's been a lot of talk about President Trump this past week from some of the candidates. You released this plan calling to stand up to Trump, as you put it. You're talking about elections, immigration enforcement, and said that would include ensuring no Wisconsin law enforcement officers are illegally cooperating with ICE. What do you mean by that specifically?
Well, we're seeing some sheriffs around the state holding immigrants in their facilities for longer than we allow under Wisconsin law in order to assist ICE. And so I would bring all the sheriffs in and say, how are we going to do this together? Because I think it's really important that law enforcement continues to have strong relationships in their communities. And I think what we're seeing with ICE is really putting a strain on relationships that law enforcement has worked very hard to build.
We've even seen some more sheriffs enter new agreements with ICE for these ICE detainers in the county jails. Would you look to ban that in the state?
I would look to work with the legislature to ban that and to make sure first that we're having those conversations and getting ahead of it.
What about the argument from those sheriffs who are cooperating and ICE that this is actually safer to make the arrests inside the county jail?
You know, I think that no matter what, we still have the requirements of the Constitution to make sure that someone is not detained for longer than they should be. And so that's what's happening in some Wisconsin jails.
You've touted your experience as the former head of WEDC, the state's economic development corporation, as unique because you've worked with and against the Trump administration. What do you see as the governor's role in working with the administration?
Well, you know, I worked a lot with the federal government as secretary of WEDC, working to make sure that resources are coming to Wisconsinites. And that conversation has to continue. But what I'm hearing from Wisconsinites is that they are so frustrated with the corruption that they're seeing, with the threats to our democracy, to free and fair elections, that we need to take proactive steps to stand up to him.
Go ahead. And so how does Missy Hughes, as governor of Wisconsin, work with the Trump administration on accomplishing that?
Well, first I'm going to stand up to them and make sure that they understand that taking Wisconsinites' resources, whether it's through tariffs or corruption, is not something we're going to stand by.
Let's talk about the state of the primary. How would you describe the state of the Democratic primary as we sit here today?
It is undecided. The leading candidate is undecided. And that's, you know, I think Wisconsinites are starting to pay attention after the spring elections. They're getting excited about who our next governor is. This is a big moment for Wisconsin. And so I'm making sure that they hear my message. And as soon as they do, they're like, oh, she's normal. She knows how the state runs. She knows what runs the state. Let's do it.
And to that, the latest poll had you at 1%. So how do you break through between now and August?
You know, that's the work of running a campaign, is getting out and meeting everyone and talking to folks, making sure that you are in places where when they want to pay attention, they're going to have a chance to meet me and talk to me and understand what I've done and what I've accomplished.
Is there a scenario you drop out before the primary?
No. This is so fun. Why would I do that? No, you know, I mean, I'm committed to this. As we were saying, I've run marathons. Like, this is a marathon, and I strongly believe in Wisconsin's ability to choose the right governor, and I want to make sure that they have me as one of those choices.
Democratic candidate for governor, Missy Hughes. Missy, thank you for stopping by again. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
With that, let's bring in Kirk Bangstad, the latest and the newest Democratic candidate for governor. Kirk, welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Thanks for having me.
We'll get to the race in a second, but you launched your campaign just days after being interviewed by the Secret Service and FBI. It was a response to that Facebook post that garnered a lot of attention, where you said either a brother or sister in the resistance needs to work on their marksmanship after the Correspondents' Dinner shooting. You were referring to the president. What did you mean by that post, just first and foremost?
Now, remember, there was another half of that post that said, or Donald Trump is trying to fake an assassination attempt to get a better news cycle. You got to read the whole thing, don't you?
Yeah, but what did you mean by that first part?
So the first part was satire that was trying to set off the second part, because I thought the assassination attempt seemed staged. This is the third one in like a year. So it was satire. I meant it as satire. I've said that all along, and I think it was taken out of context in order to create a feeding frenzy by the media, which it did, and allow Republicans to paint Democrats as politically violent.
Kirk, the state Democratic Party and a number of candidates have strongly distanced themselves from you after that controversial post condemning it. Who are your supporters at this point?
Well, I've got about 250,000 followers on Facebook, and I've got about 170,000 subscribers to our Substack page. We've been listed top 50 U.S. political analysis Substacks page in the country. Most of those people are progressives, and a lot of those people are progressives who live in Wisconsin. So I would think that I've got the best name recognition as a progressive in the state of Wisconsin right now. So the Democratic Party, who has a terrible approval rating across the country and in Wisconsin, can say all they want to about me. I'm a true Democrat, a true progressive Democrat, and I've got more name recognition than everybody in this race except for probably Mandela Barnes.
Those may be people who are supporting or who are following you on social media, but do you have their support as you run for governor of Wisconsin?
Why would I think I wouldn't?
Kirk, are you going to attend the Democratic convention in June?
I haven't gotten that far. I got to get my 2,000 signatures by June 1st, and that is my, we just got, I mean, obviously, I'm in the race really late. We've got a month to get 2,000 signatures. I will, of course, attend the Democratic convention. I'm a Democrat. I want to drag the Democratic Party kicking and screaming to a realistic place that's not owned by big money. And that's what I plan to do. And I think I can get there in Wisconsin.
If for some reason you didn't qualify for a speaking position or the party tried to prevent you from speaking, how would you respond to that?
I'd speak anyways. I'd speak outside the front door. And if they try to not let me speak, they're going to put me in office. I mean, let's be honest. If they restrict my speech as a fellow Democrat, they are going to do so much harm to their appearance, and they're going to do so much harm to the other candidates. I will win the primary if they don't let me speak. I guarantee you that.
Kirk, you launched your campaign just last weekend. How much have you raised so far?
I've raised a ton of money so far, but it's we're 3 days into this thing, so that's not something I want to talk about. I'd rather talk about why I'm in the race, my policies, all that stuff. By the way, I am going to be the first person to tell you that we are changing the way things are done in Wisconsin and in America. We're going to prove that in this race because I've got oodles of money in Facebook followers and Substack followers, the equivalent of that in my being able to reach people and give them my message.
Kirk Bangstad, the newest and latest Democratic candidate for governor who has entered the race. Kirk, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Up next, sports betting before the courts. Wisconsin suing prediction markets. The feds firing back. Next.